Hello everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to share with you our focus for this session. Today, we're going to explore Mega Goal 2.2, which is all about writing. The specific unit we'll be looking at is Unit 10. You are what you eat. We'll cover some key concepts related to writing skills and how they connect to understanding nutrition and health. So, let's get started and dive into this interesting topic together. So, think about your own experiences for a moment. What were your feelings during that unforgettable meal? Was it pure joy, excitement, or maybe a sense of nostalgia? This slide is about reflecting on those emotions because they're what make the experience memorable. Now, why is it unforgettable? Perhaps it was the setting, the company, or even the flavors that left a lasting impression. These elements turn a simple meal into a special memory that stays with us. And what was the meal itself? Was it a homemade dish, a restaurant specialty, or something you tried for the first time? Recalling the details can help us see what made that moment stand out. I want you to think of an unforgettable meal you once had. Maybe it was a celebration or a surprise, or just an ordinary day made extraordinary by that incredible taste. This warm-up is meant to connect us personally to the theme of memorable experiences, emphasizing how food often plays a central role in creating lasting memories. So let's think about this for a moment. Why do we sometimes find certain foods appealing and other times not? It's a really interesting question. Do you ever wonder what influences your perceptions of food, like taste, appearance, or even cultural background? And on the flip side, why not? What makes some foods less inviting to us? These are key questions because they touch on our personal preferences and cultural influences. Now, when I ask if you find the food appetizing, I want you to really consider what makes food look or smell appealing to you. Is it the color, the presentation, or maybe the ingredients? Our preferences can be quite subjective, and they shape how we experience food. And where can you see photos like these? Well, you might encounter images like these in cookbooks, food blogs, or even in restaurants' menus. Visuals play a huge role in how we decide what to try or what not to try. Ultimately, understanding what makes food appealing or not helps us appreciate different culinary cultures, and it can even influence how we approach food choices in our daily lives. So, keep these thoughts in mind as we continue exploring the fascinating world of food and culture. So let's take a moment to consider what the writer felt in each of these situations. Reflecting on their emotions helps us understand how context and environment influence our experiences with food. For example, did they feel comfort, excitement, or perhaps nostalgia? Recognizing these feelings allows us to see the deeper connection between mood and meal. Next, I want to point out where each meal was served. Was it at a cozy home table, a bustling restaurant, or maybe outdoors in a scenic setting? The location plays a crucial role in shaping the overall experience and making each meal memorable. Speaking of which, why was each meal memorable? Was it the flavors, the company, or the atmosphere? Sometimes, it's a combination of factors that turns an ordinary meal into a special memory. These stories highlight the power of food to create lasting impressions. Now, I invite you to read these scenarios carefully and think about your own experiences. Consider how your feelings, the setting, and the context make your meals meaningful. This reflection ties back to our overall theme, how food is more than just sustenance. It's a gateway to emotions, memories, and connections. So this experience was quite memorable for a few reasons. First off, the meal was just too much, both in terms of quantity and cost. It was at a famous seafood restaurant, which makes sense because the seafood was the main attraction. But here, where things took a turn, the amount of food served was overwhelming, and honestly, it ended up making everyone sick. Despite that, or maybe because of it, the whole experience sticks out in my mind. It really highlights how sometimes, even a seemingly perfect dining spot can turn into a memorable story, not always for the best reasons. It also ties into the overall theme of how food experiences can be unpredictable and emotionally charged, whether they're enjoyable or not. He was extremely satisfied with the meal, and you can really tell how much it meant to him. When I asked what his feelings were, he clearly expressed a sense of happiness and contentment. Interestingly, this happened while he was on the plane, which makes sense because the setting was quite special. The meal was served right there in the sky, adding a touch of luxury and uniqueness to the experience. What made this meal so memorable was that it was the tastiest and best meal he had ever had. That's a pretty high compliment and shows how exceptional the quality and flavor were. It wasn't just about the food itself, but also the context, being on a plane, enjoying such a wonderful meal, made it stand out in his memory. So, in essence, this moment highlights how a great meal can turn an ordinary experience into something truly memorable, especially when it's enjoyed in a special setting like this. Today, I want to focus on some vocabulary that can really help us describe different sizes, amounts, and spending habits. First up is immense, which means extremely large or huge. Imagine something so big that it's hard to believe, like an immense mountain or an immense crowd. It helps us convey scale in a vivid way. Next, we have feast. A feast is a large meal, often shared with many people, usually during special occasions. It's not just about eating, it's about celebration and abundance. When we talk about a feast, we're highlighting generosity and richness in food. Then there's gobble down. This phrase describes eating quickly, often without much chewing. It's like when someone is really hungry or in a rush. It gives a sense of hurried, perhaps even greedy eating, which can be quite different from savoring your food slowly. Moving on, we have exorbitant. This describes a price or amount that's much larger than what's normal or reasonable. For example, if a ticket costs an exorbitant amount of money, it's outrageously expensive. It's a useful word for expressing that something is overpriced or excessive. Finally, extravagant refers to spending more than one can afford, often in a showy or overly luxurious way. Think of someone who buys a designer bag. They don't really need just to impress others. It's about indulgence and going beyond what's necessary or sensible. All these words help us paint a clearer picture of size, quantity, and spending, which ties back to our overall theme of understanding different ways to describe and evaluate situations, whether it's about food, money, or scale. Let's start with skip a meal. This phrase means not having a meal at a certain time, which can happen for various reasons, like being busy or trying to lose weight. It's important to understand how skipping meals can affect our hunger and energy levels. Next, we have waft. To waft means to move gently through the air. Imagine a delicious smell drifting softly from the kitchen. That's wafting. It's a gentle, smooth movement, often used to describe how scents or air flow. Then there's succulent. This describes food that is juicy and really good to eat. Think of a freshly picked peach or a perfectly cooked steak. These are succulent because they are full of flavor and moisture. Now, famished is a word that means extremely hungry or starving. When you skip a meal or haven't eaten in a while, you might feel famished, which is a strong way to express just how intense your hunger can be. Lastly, appetizing. This describes food that looks or smells so good that it makes you hungry or eager to eat. An appetizing dish not only tastes great, but also appeals to your senses and stimulates your appetite. Connecting all these, understanding these words helps us better describe our experiences around food, whether it's the tempting aroma wafting through the air, the succulent quality of a meal, or the feeling of being famished. These concepts all relate to how we perceive and respond to food, which is a key part of our overall relationship with eating. Today, I want to talk about pasta. It's very delicious and always a favorite, isn't it? One of the reasons I love it is because it's so easy to make, even on busy days. Recently, I made pasta at my friend's house last week, and it turned out great. That's a perfect example of how simple ingredients and a little effort can create something really enjoyable. Overall, pasta is a wonderful dish that highlights how sometimes the simplest meals can bring the most joy, especially when shared with friends. Let's look at an example of an essay about a memorable event. Here, I want to highlight some key points that can really bring your writing to life. First, when writing about a memorable event, it's important to include vivid details that help the reader visualize what happened. Think about sensory descriptions. What did you see, hear, feel, or even smell? These details make your story more engaging. Next, focus on the emotions you experienced during that event. Sharing your feelings helps create a connection with the reader and makes your story more authentic. Also, consider the structure of your essay. Having a clear beginning, middle, and end helps your story flow naturally. This example ties into our overall theme of effective storytelling. Whether you're writing about a personal experience or an important moment, these techniques help make your essay memorable and impactful. So, when you're working on your own writing, remember to include details, emotions, and a clear structure to truly capture your audience's attention. Remember, when you're writing an essay about a memorable event, it's important to follow a few key steps. First, make sure to explain each point thoroughly, but keep it conversational so your reader stays engaged. Highlight the most important concepts so they stand out and are easy to remember. Additionally, always try to connect these points back to the overall theme of your presentation. This helps create a cohesive story and makes your message more impactful. Keeping these guidelines in mind will help you craft a compelling and well-structured essay about your memorable experience.